Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast. This is a show where we aim to educate, inspire and entertain through real life stories and interviews from people in the Scottish property community.
As always, thanks for listening and give us a follow on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to join us at our monthly networking events on the first Wednesday of every month. Tickets are available on our website. So without further ado, we'll just cut straight into this week's podcast. Okay, welcome back listeners. We're back with our market update with Jonathan here. Jonathan Williams, Bricks and Mortar Mortgages. How you doing?
All right, fellas. How you getting on? You well?
Good, thank you. Thanks for joining us here.
No, privileged to be with the two of the powerhouses from the Glasgow networking event. You guys are doing a cracking job through there.
I tell you what, we're getting 50, 60 a month. It's been great. It's been really, really good.
Obviously, Jonathan comes in, gives us a mortgage update every month, which is always great and insightful. But you've also got a legal background as well. So
for my sins, 25 years at the coalface of resi conveyancing. And then I saw the light. And
you're also a landlord as well.
Yeah, I've got about a dozen or so properties.
Nice. Good. Yeah. So we get a wee bit of this is all about opinion. So we've got these news stories here that come out. When we look over the news, property news for the month of January, we're talking about inflation, interest rates, mortgage products, property prices, rents are on the down, and the Scottish Government's latest announcement that they're scrapping the ability for tenants to appeal rent increases as well. So that'll be a wee interesting chat later on, guys. So keep posted for that. But first of all, do a quick catch up. How's business? What's happening?
Business is slow, to be absolutely honest. We do a lot of buy-to-let stuff. The 8% increase there, I think, has started potentially to affect new stuff coming in. Obviously, if you're in the game already, then it's just another sort of cost of doing business. But yeah, I mean, figures are down. We've got some interesting things that we're going to do. We're going to get into bed with Penny Lane estate agents. We've given them space in the office to see if we can move forward with getting some more leads there.
I always laugh because I'm driving down Crow Road. So you always see Jonathan standing there at his desk. He's got a standing desk. Oh. So there's traffic lights there on Crow Road, and I park up and I always have a wee look in and see what you're up to.
I tell you that story about the standing desk is that my daughter's up in Aberdeen. She's studying up there. First year, and we've been going for 4 or 5 years. First year, she plays hockey. So they're all talking after training one day, and they say, listen, what do your parents do, etc., etc. And my daughter says, he runs Bricks and Mortar Mortgages. And her pal says, who was at Jordan Hill, her pal turns around and says, that's the standing up guy. Not that that's the guy who's really good at mortgages, but that's the standing up guy. So that's what I'm known as.
I stand as well all the time. It's better for your back, 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'll try and avoid an office at any cost.
You're guzzling up and down to Aberdeen in that bloody Land Rover of yours. Yeah. So
got to go to the dark side and go electric again, I think.
How about you, Stephen? Does 8% put you off, or how's that panning out?
It has been I had look at a couple of potential hodlets and stuff for the own portfolio, and as soon as you factor in the number, you just take that little bit of a back step going, that's a painful pill to swallow it. At 200-300 grand in purchase prices, paying 8% stingy.
Is it a psychological thing though as well? Because I think people are still adjusting to that news. A lot of people don't actually know about it yet as well.
Yeah, possibly. I was chatting on the call in the group the other day, and there's a guy through Paisley, Ross Davison, and he's buying 3, and he's paying 8% on each 3, and he says, it is very, very painful, and it'll be the last singles I buy. I'm probably just going to buy portfolios from now on. So even the people that are in the game are looking at it and going, it's a huge cost of business that's needing to be absorbed, or find another way around it.
I think portfolios are going to be a big thing. If you've got the money squirreled there, and you're maybe deciding that you're going to go at something under 100 grand, maybe trying to get a 6 portfolio before the government turn around and get rid of that. Because of all the things, you're thinking, why on earth have they not done something with the 6 properties? It's just, you think, if you're trying to stop landlords, then that's what you should do, not stick 8% on.
It's the one thing that we need to keep under wraps, guys.
That's no use now.
You know it's coming, isn't it? You know they're going to...
Right, we need to edit that bit in. Kid on. Right, so obviously we're going to talk a wee bit about inflation and UK interest rates and stuff like that. We've got a Bank of England base rate decision coming out 6th of February. Yep. This is the 30th of January we're recording this. So what's your prediction? I mean, we're sitting at 4.75% bank rate.
Oh, it's coming down. Everybody's talking about it coming down.
Yeah.
And, Goldman Sachs are talking about 6 drops. They're talking about a base rate by the second quarter of 2026.
Bring it on.
They're talking 3.25 in base rate. Wow. Now, that's bullish. I'm not too sure everybody's talking about that kind of drop. HSBC, who we spoke to last week, they're reckoning by the end of the year 3.75 on the base rate. So it's certainly coming down. But that's before they factor in the potential inflation with regards to the national insurance hike, because the employers are going to have to pay more. What are they going to do? They're just going to put prices up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all down to inflation, isn't it? The bank rate kind of decisions. So a wee section here, taking out this article, I'll just read it out. City investors expect the bank to cut interest rates from the current level 4.75% at its next policy meeting on the 6th of February after better than expected inflation figures for December amid concerns over stagnant economic growth. Financial markets reflect an 81% chance of a cut to 4.5%. However, City traders warned the central bank's capacity to cut borrowing costs much further is likely to be limited by rising inflationary pressures. Investors are pricing in 2 full 0.25 percentage point cuts in 2025. I mean, it varies. Obviously, you're saying that some predicting six, but like you say, and what we're talking about earlier is the politics of the whole thing as well. Not to dwell too much in politics, but Labour have been in 6-7 months now. It's looking pretty flatline, got to be said. They announced the big tax raid, £40 billion, 25 billion of that is on employers.
Yeah.
They're looking for growth, but it's I don't think it's going to happen, and it's...
I keep seeing articles popping up as well saying that 10,000 millionaires are leaving the UK to go to Dubai and set up shop, and they're just not going to spend money and employ people and pay taxes in the country. Well, so that's going to have a huge negative effect as well.
Yeah.
But that employer cost that you were talking about, there's only basically 2 ways they can really sort that out. If you're getting hit with that burden, what are you going to do? Put prices up in the shops?
You either do that or you start making redundancies, which is going to have another cost in terms of the purse because there's less tax being paid. Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the whole geopolitics as well. Obviously, Trump's 60% tariffs on China, which hasn't happened yet. Let's just obviously see what pans out there. But as we know, pretty much everything's made in China. These glasses, Meta glasses, are probably made in China. Everyone's made in China. That's MacBook.
But he's just tariffing anything and everything. He's just like bully boy tactics is what he's playing at. And he's not necessarily, I don't think he's going to go through with it, but if he goes and says to Canada, we're sticking stuff on at 40-50%, they say no way. There's no way he's going to do 40-50%, but he might do 10 or 15.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, inflation, CPI inflation rates around about the 2.5% at the moment. Yeah. Target is 2%, but if we start seeing that inflation going up, say 3.5-4%, they're not going to be able to drop the rates that much.
Yeah.
That much more.
You know what? I've got an eye not necessarily on the Bank of England base rate, because the Bank of England base rate only moves on a monthly basis, and there's no way that the banks and building societies out there are waiting every month for the Bank of England to make a decision. They're moving. They need to move a lot quicker. So what I would do is I would be looking at swap rates, SONIA swap rates, 2 and 5 years. And just yesterday, the swap rates came down on both the 2 and the 5 years. Swap rate for 5 year dipped under 4%, 3.995, I think it was. Dipped under 4% for the first time in months. And immediately we saw 2 or 3 banks come out with reducing rates. So I would be always watching swap rates. And
so they're reacting. So basically what you're saying, the lender's reacting more to that swap rate figure.
Yeah, because that's the interbank borrowing rate. So if Bank of Scotland are going to want to buy some money from Santander, it's the swap rates that they'll use.
And obviously that is impacted by the greater world bond rates as well. So the UK gilt as well, that filters through from that. So the cost of government borrowing effectively filters through to that as well. So like you say, keep an eye on these wider markets.
Yeah, definitely. Swap rates is, if you're interested in what's happening with the rates, then swap rates are a great indicator as to what the banks are thinking about doing.
Yeah, I mean, as you well know, Jonathan, because you've just arranged my mortgage for my own resi house, but that's just hit in January there, so I'm noticing quite a few for sale signs round about our estate in the last 6 months as well. People will be coming off these 5-year fixed terms.
At the end of your 5-year fixed?
Yeah.
Oh.
So that went from, I think it was about 830 to about maybe 1,200. It's a fair whack.
What was the jump in rate then?
I mean, we were on like 1.6%, and it went up to, I can't remember, was it like low 4s or something like that?
Still a jump, isn't it? A considerable jump. I've got mine next July coming up, and then mine's on 1.5 as well.
Are you serious? Oh my God, you're going to be hit as well.
But what if your portfolio is on, limited company? I got some stuff with Paragon, bought some limited company stuff, and it's 3.6. When I come out of that in 2027, it's going to be 5, potentially 6. What happens if you're coming out of that now and you've just come into the market? I mean, I think that's going to be a real bother for a lot of people.
I had a couple of buy-to-let, sorry.
No, I was just thinking the exact same, and it's talking about the cost of inflation with the national insurance. It's the same with the property market. If you're getting hit with higher interest rates and an 8% or even buy-in, the rents have to go up considerably. The only way, talking about rents going up, exactly, the only way I've managed to weather that storm, and I've had quite a few that have come to the buy-to-lets that have come to the end of either the 2 year, the 5 years, is by raising those rents. And I've been lucky in a way that some of them have tenants that have left, and I've managed to go from like £500 a month up to £800 a month. Yeah. So I've just done my tax return there for my portfolio limited company. We're actually up on profits despite the rise in the new rates. So.
But for you, you've been in the market for absolutely ages. And for you, actually raising the rents, 'cause remember we spoke about this, raising the rents was something you didn't generally do. You were more concerned about keeping the tenant in there and keeping them happy, okay? So for you, it's a bit unusual to see these rates going up and up and up. If you've come into the market post-COVID 2028, when all you know is 1 or 2% interest rates and stupid rental figures, and you start seeing, hold on here, my cash flow is going from £400 a month to £200 a month, and then maybe you're geared to 75%. There's a little bit of a dip in terms of the value of your property. For example, if you're in Glasgow and they start building all these apartment hotels and they start getting the students in there, I've got a concern that there's a perfect storm potentially coming.
Yeah, I've said that before as well. You've seen a lot of people enter the market the last 5-6 years that managed to build a portfolio on 2 or 3% interest rates. Well, let's face it, anybody can.
Any Tom, Dick and Harry could do that.
It's now
you were talking about portfolios. This is one thing that people need to be extra careful buying portfolios as well. I mean, obviously it depends what size you're talking about, but obviously long-term tenants on old rents, it's hard to get them up because you can't just go in there. I mean, although, the rent controls are getting lifted gradually until they come in with the housing bill later on down the line. But you can't just storm in there buying a portfolio and say to the tenant, we're going
morally, you can't do that.
But financially as well, like the tenant's on £400 a month, you're saying, I need to get you up to like, £700 a month or something like that. Where are people finding that at 300 quid? So
they're probably already struggling at £400 because as with most people, the money comes in, the money goes out.
There's an affordability on £400 a month now. They can't pay £650, £700.
I do think the portfolio is a great strategy long term. If you can,
I found a dip in the portfolio strategy. I was speaking to you on the phone the other day. A lot of the stock that we bought in portfolios the last couple of years, as soon as you're getting tenant churn, these properties that somebody's owned for 25 years are now needing a refurb. And we had a few in December and January vacating before putting on the market. We're refurb them, so we're almost got 6-7 renovations having to go on at the same time. Okay, you're getting the rental income up when you refurb them, but you're starting to spend a whole lot of capital to get these properties right back
cash
out again.
Flow.
Yeah, so it's hitting the cash flow quite a lot. And
then obviously, like some people it's hard, I would imagine. I've never bought a portfolio, right? But when you're doing your due diligence, say you're buying a portfolio of 25, you're probably not going to go and see every one of them. Do you know what I mean? You're maybe going to see a couple. Then you're going to take the word that what's the internal condition like? You don't really know, do you, until you actually the tenant leaves, like you say, and then you're having to go in there and spend 20 grand. But you said as well, like your renovation costs,
are going up through the roof. It's a shame that Magnolia's not in anymore, because I would have been alright just to re-rent them again.
Egyptian cotton, that's the new Magnolia. Everyone's going for Egyptian cotton now, isn't it? The greys are out and the Egyptian cotton's in.
Egyptian cotton over the Magnolia might only need one coat then, Jesus.
Let's take a quick break, guys, from today's show to talk about selling your property with Prime Property Auctions. Now, myself and Stephen have both used John and Lewis from Prime in the past, and we can personally vouch for their service. They sell vacant and tenanted property, and you get to control the minimum reserve price so that you're not selling your property for peanuts. They pay for all the stuff like photos, videos, and all the marketing stuff up front, so you're not paying anything from the start, and it's a no sale, no fee. So if you want to check out Prime Property Auctions, then get across to the link on the show notes and speak to the guys. I've also seen grey skirtings now as well, the dark grey skirtings and doors. I think that's particularly good if you go in and you've got the woodwork as like oak or mahogany or something like that. You know, it's like a dark woodwork and you need to do like 4 or 5 coats or those kind of like brown doors.
Black or grey right at the top of it.
Just get the grey gloss out and you're sorted. 2 coats, bish bash bosh.
Grey gloss.
It's paint the radiators grey while you're at it.
No, my mum does that. I think she's the only person who does that. I think that's such a sort of 70s or 80s thing. Paint the radiators so you hide them. Why?
Then they start flaking. Oh, they look terrible after that. Anyway, we're getting off subject here, but it's good to have these chats as well.
Well, that's the reality of being an investor, being a landlord, being a portfolio owner at this day and age.
Absolutely. Getting back to the mortgage rates, Jonathan, obviously you're keeping an eye on the products that are coming in. I sent you this link here, which you pretty much poo-pooed straight away. It's a new mortgage lender that's come into the Scottish buy-to-let market. They're called West One Loans. And the firm says its loans sold exclusively through intermediaries cater for a range of amateur and professional landlords. Oh, and the headline rate has started from 2.59%.
Right.
So you had a wee look at this.
If you want 2 whatever that is, you're getting charged 7% arrangement fee.
Yeah,
you're taking a bath in terms of that.
ADS
and your 8%. So you're 15%.
And I add that to
buying it.
Yeah.
Why? Well, why are they coming to Scotland?
Yeah.
I think that there may well be room for them if they're doing really quirky stuff and they're almost like a sort of last chance saloon, a Shawbrook. Nobody's going to lend to me. My TMW won't lend. My Precise, my Paragons, my Kensingtons. Who the hell is going to lend? You know, if they're the lender of last chance saloon, then they may mop stuff up. But you're telling me that somebody's going to go for a standard £100,000 ex-local authority 75k mortgage, and they want to pay 7% to get a 2.29.
I mean, it might work
when TMW or Leeds are doing 4.65 without a fee.
But like you say, it's maybe more a together model. It says on their website, they say the home is specialist lending. And then they've got bridging loans, development finance, buy-to-let mortgages, portfolios, mortgages as well. So for people that are, I don't know, like they do the day one, the day one remortgages and all that as well. So I know there's people making that work out there on the higher rates.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to go and factor in the numbers into them, like you say. But I'd be fearing the same as Jonathan, thinking it's a perfect storm. If you're adding 8% on your buying cost and 7% on your arrangement, and you either get no growth or a drop in house prices,
when you come to do your refinancing, are you talking about when you come to do your refinancing, your remortgages?
Because most people, I'm assuming, would put these arrangement fees on it to their loan term. So, like you say,
yeah, for sure. Nobody's paying that up front.
Can you just, for the listeners, right? Because often we get caught up in just jargon, just blasting on about this stuff. Can you give us a wee example about negative equity and just how that could work if people are over leveraging or taking out these high arrangement fees, and then it might not necessarily pan out for them? Just £100,000 kind of.
£100,000, you're borrowing £75,000. Let's say you go with a West One 7%. Okay, so 7% of 75,000 thousand, what's that, about £5,000. So you've then got a mortgage of 80,000, right? There's a little bit of a dip in terms of what your property's worth. So in 2 years' time, when you come out to have a look at that, your property's not worth £100,000, it's maybe worth £95,000. You've now got a mortgage that is £80,000, and you don't get 75%. So you're then having to go back cap in hand to West One, and they say, thanks very much, we'll have another 7%, and you know.
And you're on our standard variable.
Yeah.
So what and again, we're talking about standard variables now on some of these lenders. What would that could be?
Well, mid-share is 8%, I think.
Potentially 8.5%, and then that's wiping out your cash.
Or you're putting your hand right in your pocket enough and then go and put in 7, 8, 9, 10, or whatever grand.
Which you probably don't have, because why on earth did you add the arrangement fee in the first place?
Listen,
this thing about going for the cheapest rate with an arrangement fee, it a lot of the time it just doesn't make financial sense.
Yeah.
So when somebody comes to us, what we will do is we will give them a cost analysis over a 2-year period and a 5-year period, and we will factor in the cash back, we'll factor in the arrangement fee, and we'll lay it bare in terms of what the figures are.
Total cost of the borrowing for the 5-year on based on paying that fee, not paying that fee. Yep.
And generally, you've got to be borrowing sort of over 120, 130,000 pounds before you start thinking about is sensible doing an arrangement fee. I just think adding on the arrangement fee, you're hoping that the property is going to continue in value, because if you're on interest only.
The problem with these mainstream lenders, you know, the kind of mortgage works and all the rest of it, like, you've not got a hope in hell getting a mortgage with the mortgage works now at your scale. They won't look at you, will they? So
4 or more buy-to-lets, they don't touch yours, is it?
No, you're okay with T&W.
Oh, is it?
T&W are one of the ones that are pretty good. As long as you've got your stuff in limited company, then pretty much everybody have a look at you, dependent upon the criteria.
Even if you get to a big portfolio landlord,
yeah,
stuff
if
like
you've got a big portfolio level and it's in your individual name, that's where you start to have problems.
Most people
but generally, if you're in limited company and you've got a decent sized portfolio, then pretty much everybody will look at you dependent upon criteria. The amount of properties in your portfolio is not.
It was T&W that refused me before, because at that time I was flipping properties and just putting.
They don't like that.
What's your job title? I was like, property developer.
No.
Refuse.
I would have told you not to do that.
It's time you got a job, by the way.
Is it?
Time you get a real job, mate.
I can never be employed. No one's going to employ me.
That way you'll get a mortgage.
Unemployable now.
Moving on. Right, let's talk about rents. Right, so we've got some rent data out from Rightmove. They do a quarterly report, last quarter from October to December. Their headline is "First drop in rents since pre-pandemic as supply continues to improve." And actually, running a letting agency, wee shameless plug there. I've noticed this on the ground, and I've talked about this before, at the events.
Leveling out.
Rents are definitely going through a correction. I wouldn't say a massive drop. I would say it's a correction, because, you know, they've got stats here, and again, this is UK wide for Rightmove.
And you've mentioned it before. If you're getting 50, 100 people applying for a property, and you can get that 50 quid a month more, is it just leveling out and taking that 50 quid off that effectively?
Well, annually we were seeing increases of 12 to 14% in Glasgow. That could never sustain, because obviously people's wages can only go up to a certain level that can take that, and then it just reaches a peak. But what was interesting is, if you look at the map, they've got a map of the whole UK, and if you look at Scotland, which during the time where, I don't know if you remember, but during the time where we had even at the 0% rent caps, where you couldn't increase your rents, and then coming out of that, where the government said, right, landlords, you can now propose any rents to your tenants, we were actually, percentage change, rents were going up massively. We're now negative 1.9% over the quarter. So there's definitely a change there. Annually, we're still up 4.7%. So you've gone from like 12 to 14% to like 4.7%. So it's definitely kind of slowing down in terms of growth.
So what's that to do? Is that to do with supply and demand, that there's less people looking, or are there more properties now that have become available?
So obviously it is, it's all supply and demand dynamics, isn't it? One of the things that they've mentioned in this report is that some demand may have transitioned to the sales market, particularly first-time buyers, helped by lowering mortgage rates and higher average wages. So,
Well, that's the green agenda. It's working for them.
if you think about it, coming out of pandemic and all the rest of it, people were just, getting, a lot of people would move back in with their parents and all that, hadn't they? And then they're coming back out of the lockdown pandemic. And this took years to sort out this whole supply demand imbalance. So they've come out of the rental market, gone, stayed back home. They're now going back into the rental market. Rents go absolutely mental. Mortgage rates start leveling out and coming down a little bit. So now young people, first-time buyers, like that, right, it's time to buy now. So I think there is an element of that.
But if that was the case, I'd be run off my feet.
Well, this is how it's not really tying in. I think you just need to do more social media posts. I think it's your marketing strategy. You need to get on TikTok. You need to do more TikToks.
I can't do any more. I'm on a streak of 64 days in a row.
You're actually doing. Your content's actually brilliant. But so that doesn't tie in with that, right? Okay, this is UK wide, but we are definitely seeing tenants handing in notices for rental properties.
And do you ask them where they're going?
Yeah, and one of the top reasons is we've bought a place.
Right.
Yeah, so I definitely think first-time buyer mortgages.
Yeah.
But you're saying that you're not seeing the first-time buyers?
No, not a great.
Interesting.
Not a great deal.
Well, that's in this report. So basically, right move, you're talking pish. No, looking back at this, another reason they said is agents report some tenants are choosing to stay put rather than move due to costs. And while there's evidence of some landlords choosing to exit the market, there's also a sign that other perhaps larger landlords are continuing to invest. We're actually seeing the supply levels at pretty good levels. So all this chat about landlords, this mass exit, I don't think it's happening personally. The landlords that are selling up, and in January, this happens every January because people are doing their tax returns, that people that have left it to last minute, and the people that have got one property and decent paying jobs that have become accidental landlords, they're like, this is actually not worth it. So they're selling up. So those are the people that we've lost in the last month, maybe 3 landlords, single property landlords, so this is not worth it anymore. On the flip side to that,
it's kind of where you want the market to go, don't you?
On the flip side of that, we have plenty of portfolio landlords and investors that are buying, so we're actually up. I mean, we've probably lost 3 properties and we've taken on about 8 to 10 in the month. So our supply is definitely up. I don't know what other letting agents are saying. It's very hard to get the data of how many properties. It's easier to get the data of how many landlords, but it's harder to get the data of how many registered properties.
Do you, at one point, do you go and speak to other agents, and are they quite happy to tell you their figures?
No,
why is that?
It's such a weird industry that way. I've you know me, I'll tell you quite transparently, but it's a weird thing in the letting.
Is that going to make a difference to, I don't know, the Shantalettings or something? I mean, the fact that, well, why aren't you?
I don't know. It's just that it's that whole thing. Traditionally, estate agents, letting agents, that whole competition thing.
Everyone cloak and dagger.
Everyone keeps themselves. You know me. We have letting agents, loads of letting agents on here all the time. We try and get people to open up. Mark Shanter's really good. He comes on, shares his data, shares his thoughts. Yeah. The kind of more traditional, I would say, letting agents, they're a bit kind of closed book. And it's funny because I go on the SAL calls, on the Scottish Association of Landlords, and there'll be all these other letting agents there, right? There may be 40 to 50 people on the calls. Not one person comes on and says anything. There's like me and this other woman up in Aberdeen, Northwood or something like that.
Oh, is it Nicola?
I can't remember if it's Nicola. She's decent. She comes on, shares data. We all kind of try and help each other.
But that's what you want to do. You want to be sharing as much data as possible, and then you have an idea
of what's the reality of
absolutely on the ground, not relying upon Zoopla or Rightmove to give you figures that are just completely useless.
Yeah. How do you find that in your industry with mortgage brokers?
It's good. We've got a group of 6 or 7 Glasgow mortgage brokers, and we bounce ideas off, so much so that if somebody says, listen, I'm really struggling with this particular client, has anybody got any ideas? And there'll be a whole raft of answers saying, have you tried Coventry? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? It's great. Now, I've never actually gone in and sat them and stared in their eyes and said, listen, what's your turnover? What's over turnover? But I'm sure that if you did, and it's all about creating relationships. And if you've got a strong relationship that you've obviously got with Mark Shanta, I'm sure he would be more than happy to tell you.
You were saying you were down 30% on this same time last year.
Yeah. In the first 5 months, we were 30% down.
And what are you putting
in
that
terms
down
of
in?
income? I don't know. A lack of leads. I don't know. It's been like that since July. I mean, I look at my monthly figures. We've been going 6 years, and I look at my monthly figures, okay? And I can tell you that from July, we did 235K in income in last year, okay? Which is around about 20K a month. And that is protection, it's everything, okay? It's we charge fees, it's commissions, and we're down 30%. And it's a lack of volume. I mean, we got 235 last year mainly because we had more of a focus on protection, which pays pretty well. But if you look at the mortgages, the amount of business that we had written had gone down significantly. Now, I don't know whether or not. It would be interesting for me to go and speak to George Williamson at the Mortgage Advice Bureau and sit him down and say, listen, are you finding this? And when I speak to estate agents, and my first question to estate agents is always, what are you taking on? Because if they're not taking on stuff, that tells me nobody's going to be making any money.
That's the pipeline, isn't it? And that'll come through to mortgage brokers eventually.
Do you think it's the fact that there's people not, like the newer people maybe not entering the market and buying your single buy-to-lets to start off with, but your portfolio landlords have maybe got their bigger loans lumped in the one, or they're on 5-year fixed and they might come and see you in a few years' time, oh, here's my renewal. Now,
the other interesting, you should talk about that, because there was a big change about 2 years ago between 2 and 5 year fixed rates, and 2-year fixed rates were historically always cheaper than 5-year fixed rates. So when somebody came to you, you would say, listen, you could go for a 5-year, but it's going to be a couple of ticks higher than a 2-year. And everybody's saying, listen, fine, they're positive, the market will go, it'll come down, it'll come back, rates will come down, I'll just go for a 2-year and I'll put my head above the parapet in 2 years' time.
People are just fixing longer term.
But 2 years ago, that changed in its head. So 5-year deals were significantly, for a period, were significantly cheaper than 2-year deals. So you're saying to clients, listen, I think you want to lock in for a 5-year deal, because if you take a 2-year deal, you're already from day one paying more money than you are for a 5-year deal, and nobody wants to be paying more money for anything. But if you're going for a 2-year deal, you have to be confident that in 2 years' time, it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, you've made a wrong decision. You've been paying 24 months.
As well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what's happened is that there's a lot of stuff that went out at 5 years. So that has impacted, and I'm absolutely convinced that will have impacted every single mortgage broker out there, that instead of coming back every 2 years, you're now coming back every 5 years. So potentially, if you've got a huge mortgage book,
churn, you're not getting the churn as often.
You've lost half the business.
Yeah, that's interesting, because a broker I used from Glasgow a couple of years ago put me on the portfolio kind of loan that you were mentioning on that similar rates, 3.12 with Aldermore, and I said I want a 5-year fix, as I was doing, just park it for the longer period of time. That's my strategy. And I think it was when they were becoming quite obvious there wasn't much difference in the 2 and 5s, and she done a mistake and put it through a 2-year, and because of how much a pain in the arse it was getting it through with Aldermore appointed legal, I won't mention the names, it dragged on for months and months, to the point when I looked at the kind of the final loan offer, I was like, you put in a flipping 2-year, I've made a mistake, if you want to go and restart, it's going to be a new application. And I was like, do you know what, fuck it, and I regret it, because obviously the 2-year just came up 4 or 5 months ago and went from 3.1 to 6.99. So it was an increase of 1,200 quid, and I was like, I fucking knew it. I was sticking to my guns at the 5-year fixed.
I don't like to say, but you wouldn't have had to have done another application. You just phone up Aldermore. Aldermore, I don't know how long ago that was, but Aldermore,
plug for the right mortgage brokers.
Aldermore are actually pretty good to deal with. I mean, for years I just didn't touch them with a barge pole.
They're good on their changeover. They're good on their product switch.
Yeah. And interestingly, for buy-to-let investors out there, I think they've changed their criteria. And I mentioned this at the last meeting, that they have lowered their criteria from a minimum purchase price of £75,000 down to £50,000, which is great if you're buying ex-local authority. And the game changer is that they're not concerned about saleability, they're worried about rentability. And what I mean by that is that when you go to a lender, the lenders are always paranoid about having to repossess a property. So they're looking at what the saleability is, right? So if you're buying somewhere in an ex-local authority, you might not have a lot of sales. And a lot of lenders run scared about that. So Aldermore said, listen, as long as we can rent it, then we're fine about that. So they're not interested in saleability, it's rentability. That's a huge game changer.
That's quite
huge
good,
game changer for them.
Very good point. Yeah, that's really good. Interesting.
Listen, I know you're down 30%, but I'm not feeling sorry for you. Making 20k a month, man. Do you know what I mean? And he's living in a big fancy house in the West End.
Hey, listen, do you think that's not been paid for with a mortgage? That was when I was a lawyer. That was all. And the only reason I was staying there, I'll tell you, is that property.
Right.
We sold a place in 2007, just before the crash, and just made it was ridiculous. And that's the only reason I'm staying where I'm staying. And listen, hand on heart, if you talk to anybody, that's probably the only reason why they're staying where they are.
Yeah.
No point moving. Yeah.
Well, there's no point moving. And I've been lucky in that I've sold at the right time and daft growth. And that's my portfolio of 12 properties, exactly the same. I bought a place in Broomhill Terrace back in the 90s, early 90s, 75,000, right? Me and my mate, we rented a couple of rooms. I then started to take money out. As the place went up in value, I started to take money out. So although we had a joint mortgage, we were adding more money. But I said to my mate, listen, if it goes up, then I'll be responsible for that. So that's how I ended up buying more property. And then we sold that. We bought it for 75,000. Quite literally 2 years later, had we painted it maybe once? I think we sold it for 200 grand.
What? 2 years?
It was something like that. It was absolutely bonkers.
Jeez,
I mean,
what year was that?
That would have been 94.
Right.
And I think we maybe sold it 97, maybe 4 or 5 years. But it was just, you were just thinking, what do you want to pay 200 grand
what's
for
that
this?
phrase that all the gurus come out with? It's time in the market, not timing the market. But I think
That's timing the market.
that's definitely timing the
I don't know
market.
if anyone could predict that.
But that's absolute luck.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way.
Well, you did the same in your first one.
Inverness went from 40 grand to 107 or something like that in 4 years.
Yeah.
But you're in the market. I think it's your time in the market and your timing. But if you're not in the market, you've had it.
When we get, I'd be interested to see, because I feel like we're going to house prices a bit later on, but I feel like we're just bobbing along again. We did have that kind of explosive growth out of the pandemic, which things went up. Like certain areas, things were going crazy at 15, 20%, didn't we?
Well, that was because nobody could spend any money on anything. You didn't have to. You were working, but you didn't have to pay for your transport costs. You couldn't buy anything. You couldn't go out. And so there was this wodge of money in everybody's bank accounts. And what did they decide to do? They decided to just start buying property.
Yeah, but interestingly, that didn't follow a bust, is what I'm saying. Usually with a boom, an explosion, you get that down as well.
That was very specific though.
Yeah, you're not predicting that.
So my question is, we're bobbing along at 2-5% growth, depending on where you are at the moment, house price.
Yeah.
Is that just going to, when are we going to have that next explosion and have that crash? According to
was the explosion last year? Because I mean, I was looking back at data a few weeks ago, and Dunfermline, my city, was up one of the highest in Scotland at 10.8%. So we've got another double-digit growth. Again, quite a lot of areas when I looked at the data. Is that another boom? And like you say, you've not had any drop. You had COVID in another year. Okay, it wasn't quite as big growth, but you've had probably 3 years of fairly significant growth.
According to Fred Harrison, what's his name? Fred Harrison, who does the 18-year property cycle. He predicts 2026, but he's been right in the last two crashes.
Yeah, he has,
so let's go with him. Sorry, getting on
How
to.
could he have predicted 2008?
He did.
He honestly predicted the meltdown
and the 90s and the 90s as well.
Yeah, he didn't.
1990, 1991.
What's he saying in 2026?
I don't know the reason. It'd probably be something to do with Trump, innit? He's going to crash everything. It's a car crash waiting to happen. So don't know if he's managed to sort out the Palestine thing yet, but and Ukraine.
It's interesting, the more, because I heard Fred Harrison's prediction a few years ago, and you thought, and I was probably one of those that was like, nah, it's coming sooner than that. We've had boom for too many years. We've got to go for this bust. But as it's getting closer and closer, you've kind of got to think, is he going to be right again?
I don't think it's going to be a massive
I don't
crash.
So. Yeah.
I just can't see it. Not with the way mortgage rates have kind of levelled off, and everyone's kind of adjusted now, haven't they, to that kind of, that kind of 4% and all that.
It's not going to go back to 1 or 2%.
Yeah,
new norm.
That's it. Yeah,
right. Landlords, pay attention. I've got some breaking news for you. So obviously the Scottish Government had come in with their draconian measures of capping the rents and all the rest of it, and then that finished. But so landlords could say to their tenants, right, I'm going to increase your rent by whatever amount they wanted to, but the tenants had the ability to contest it and appeal, basically. Now, this was plastered all over the bus stops and everything, big banners, and it was well publicised to protect tenants. Rightly so, Can't be like exposing tenants to crazy increases. I don't agree with it. So what was happening was, you would, as a tenant, you would get your notice that your rent was going up. They could then take that to the Rent Office Scotland, rent officer.
As if it's over 12%, was it?
Yeah, so basically, in effect, if the rent officer looked at it, there was basically a tapering effect formula.
I think one of the things we questioned at the time was, who the hell's the rent officers? And I've never seen any jobs apply for rent officers.
They're not all based in Dundee.
Yeah, there is a job, or I don't know how many people, but they were inundated anyway. But basically, the decisions were coming back, and all our decisions that came back were pretty much in favour of the landlord, to be honest with you, because we're not going crazy. We're just going at like market rate and stuff. But effectively, there was still a cap at 12%. Mm-hmm. That was the maximum in effect you could get. But what they've done now is they've scrapped it from the 1st of April. This comes quite a surprise, because everybody thought the housing bill's going through Parliament. Now, this was Patrick Harvey who implemented this. This is for longer term rent controls, which were going to be written into the legislation to say that all the local councils are going to have the authority to cap rents if rents get out of control. And also, the biggest thing that landlords were finding hard, and what's caused the big basically melt down the whole build to rent sector and all the institutional investors pulling out, is the fact that they were going to cap or control the changes in, see when a tenant leaves and you've got that void period, that's your chance as a landlord to get the property up to market rent. Yeah. But they were saying now that in between tenancies, they're going to control the rent, they can cap the rents as well. Right? So that was coming in the housing bill. And that's still coming in. So, but the housing bill it might not come into effect until 2027. So everybody thought that these temporary measures, where tenants still had that protection to apply to the rent office, that was just going to keep going until 2027.
That would seem sensible.
So now it seems like a bit of a free for all for certain landlords. Now everybody sitting in this room just now, and all our clients are sensible about it. And are not going to go in and do like crazy 20% increases, but there will be people out there that will try and take advantage of this.
Completely remove that, and you could say to the tenant, "This is the new rent," and they would have no appeal to rent officer.
They can still go to the rent officer or the tribunal, right, but basically the rent officer will come back and set the rent at the open market value.
Which I think is good for the people that have either bought portfolios or held their rent very low before the caps came in, and they couldn't get anywhere near market rent because of the restrictions. So it is now an opportunity to get it to
up to market level. So if you had a rent at £500 a month, right, previously, like before the 1st of April 2025, and the market rent is say £800 a month, right, and you're losing out massively. Before, if you said to tenant, I need to get up to market level £800 a month, then they could go to the rent office, and then the rent office would look at it, and you would probably only get maximum 12%. Yeah. Now what they're saying is, if the rent office deems that the market rent's £800 a month, that's what they're setting it at. So the tenant has no protection there anymore. It's going to go from 500 to 800.
Well, how have the Greens allowed that to go through?
The Greens they're away. They're smoke.
It's interesting.
Greens are away.
It's interesting.
They've been on. Why has Patrick Harvey not been on?
Well, it's just happened.
It's a disgrace as it is.
This has just happened. This only came out last week. This has came out from the Scottish Association of Landlords. It's totally unpredicted.
It's interesting the backpedal though.
Why? And why have they done that? Everyone's like,
are they overwhelmed?
Because,
or is it to lure you into a false sense of security that then they're going to come in with the
because they're not going to get good publicity from this. You know, and a very small proportion of the voting public is landlords. Why are they still not protecting tenants, you know?
Well, they won't make that public knowledge, will they, like they did with the caps?
It's not coming out in any of the newspapers.
No.
This has only been released by Scottish Association of Landlords. It's not coming out in any of the press yet. So I think that they've a couple of things. They've maybe realised they've gone too far now, and they need to kind of take a wee bit of pressure off, because they've lost all the, and their whole strategy, right? They want
It doesn't make sense on the basis that the bill's still going through.
Well, the bill's still going through, but again, there's a lot to be debated on in Parliament about this, and my thought is that that'll get watered down as well in terms of, you know, the longer term rent control, because they've lost all the build to rent developers, which basically they were hedging their bets on to solve the housing crisis. They want to get big developers in, they want to get big pension money in to build these big blocks to try and boost the supply, to try and keep rents under control, because they've got this strategy, this longer term strategy of building 110,000 homes, affordable homes in Scotland by 2031 or something like that. They need institutional money. They need private investment. That private investment stopped as soon as everybody heard about these rent controls. So are they backtracking now?
There's no logic in their decision, because people have got used to what the new norm is, which is if you want to increase, then the tenants have got a right of appeal. Okay, it's like tax. The ADS 8%. You see, if Labour come in, are Labour going to go back and say, listen, 8%, no, we're going to go back to 3%? No, they just get used to it.
The revenue's
and
going to be there. They're not going to,
and you just move on. So I don't understand
there must have been
why.
A motivation to backtrack,
It came as a surprise. So let's see. So the next thing to look out for now is, you know, how will the housing bill progress through the Parliament now, and what are going to be. But again, we could have a change of government by 2026, and who knows where it's going to go.
Was this change?
Could have a change.
We could have a change, probably certain.
Is this change
the way that
because of this backtracking, because the Greens are no longer in? And this was
possibly,
green, this was green,
but that
wasn't it?
I would imagine. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. Nobody's got an answer to it.
Do you think maybe they don't have enough rent officers?
Well, that's the other thing.
that could be another thing.
Hugely
A theory.
overwhelmed, because I think the rent officers, were they not inside the planning department, which is already stretched to its capacity as it is. So
it could be.
We've got no capacity to deal with these
Could
inquiries.
be. Listeners, if you listen to this, let us know.
Stephen, you maybe want to dust off that CV of yours.
And I could be getting a job again.
It could be.
Right, okay, lastly, on the house prices then, house price index for Scotland, lagging data, but the latest figures are the annual price change, we're up 4.7% in Scotland. So like I said, bobbing along the 5%. Again, it all depends on where your property is. But I personally, I still think that, you know, by the end of the year, we'll still be at that kind of 5% growth level. Jonathan, I know you don't take much on this, but you speak to local estate agents.
Listen, it goes up in one ear and out the other when I see this Zooplan, right? I mean, it doesn't mean anything to me.
What's the estate agent saying then?
Well, there's a lack of every estate agent I speak to, whether it's your small guys or your big guys, is that there's a lack of stock. There's a lack of stock coming on. I spoke to Barry Walker at Walker Wiley, and he was telling me that there's more people. He's seeing more people who are looking, which is a good thing.
Buyer demand, sorry, just to give you the stats, buyer demand is 13% higher than a year ago, so that ties in.
So he's saying then there's a lack of stock, there's more people buying, and all that's going to do in the Scottish system is that you're going to end up paying over home report. So I think Scotland and England, it's complete, and all of that Zoopla stuff is so skewed, I think, towards England, where it's a case of offers over 395, you never pay 395, you pay 370. Whereas up here, everybody's paying offers over, everybody's paying over the home report value. And so I think the Scottish market is always going to move forward quicker than the English market.
We always like to see the league table and where Aberdeen's sitting in the league. So we've got 19 listed cities in the Zoopla report. Aberdeen is still on the bottom there at 0.4%. But we're positive in the green.
At least we're positive, yeah.
0.4%.
Just below Leicester.
Growth. Glasgow's...
that's just before Edinburgh. Edinburgh's at 17.
Aye, why is Edinburgh? Edinburgh's not doing great. Glasgow's up at 6th. Number 6, top is Belfast and Manchester. Manchester, you've been to Manchester lately, by the way? That place is flying. Like Manchester,
It's been flying for years.
It has been.
Yeah.
The latest one I think to go is Newcastle. I think Newcastle's got really good potential, and I think that's going to be a good growth area. If you want to avoid 8% as well, go and speak to.
I was going to just say 3% there, but it's not. They're up to 5 now, aren't they? So it's not a huge amount below what it was.
Aye. But so that's so I think we'll probably wrap up there, guys. That's giving you a wee breakdown of what's happening in the market, hopefully. And Jonathan, where can people reach out to you? How can you help them?
Yeah, Bricks and Mortar Mortgages. As I say, I'm on a streak of 60 odd days in terms of the social media, so we're on all of the socials. My daughters like my handle on one of them, which is BAM Mortgages, which I think is very Glasgow.
Aye. You don't look like a BAM, to be fair.
Bricks and Mortar Mortgages.
Standing at his desk.
Reaching out, email Jonathan at bricksandmortarmortgages.co.uk.
There's not many BAMs kicking about the West End anyway, so brilliant, Jonathan. It was a good chat, and we'll see you at the Glasgow networking event as well.
Always a
next
pleasure.
week.
Never
All
a
right.
chore.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much.
Thank
Cheers.
you.